Hi Liz, how are you?
Hi, Simon. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm very well, thank you. Look, thank you ever so much for taking your time to come and do this interview with us. It's so appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Look, we've spoken before. For the sake of context and for the viewers, we'll delve straight into it. Um, Tell us about the build up to what happened to you, the day itself, and the events that unfolded.
The background context actually was that I was living in quite an emotionally abusive environment growing up. I had a step parent who was drinking too much, and when they drank, the more their temper increased. And so that was a very difficult kind of background setting. And I had a very low self-esteem. So I was constantly being told that I was doing things wrong, that there was something wrong with me. And, you know, as children, we believe what we're told. And over time, I really started to internalize that actually, maybe that was true, that actually maybe there was something wrong with me. Obviously not, I didn't know that at the time, but this is reflecting back, I can see that that's the pattern that was created. And then as a way for me to get recognition, I used to love playing sports. So I used to love tennis and netball, and in the summer athletics. And I got to the age of 13, and I had been selected to throw the javelin for the school team, so against other schools in competitions and things like that. And I'd done really well. And so I was really looking forward to our school sports day event, which was on the 15th of July 1983. And so I woke up that day really looking forward to the day, because I believed I was in with a really good chance of winning a medal for my house team, which meant a lot to me at that time, because it would be that recognition, like I say, that I craved back then. And so went off to school as normal. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny day. And I remember in registration in my form class that the teacher was asking if there were any volunteers in my class. If anyone wasn't taking part, could they volunteer to help out in the afternoon sports day? And, you know, several of my classmates, my friends, volunteered. And three of those were Sammy, Sarah and Sarah, three of my classmates. So I went into classes as usual that morning, and then the sports day started that afternoon. And I'd taken part in the high jump, the long jump. I'd done okay, but hadn't got the medal that I was hoping for. And so had all my hopes pinned really on the javelin event. So I, remember walking across the field and just really kind of steeling myself, thinking, right, I'm really going to go for it, going to go for this medal. Got to the javelin event itself, and there was a few of us taking part. And we had a history teacher and English teacher who were actually overseeing the javelin event. So there was no PE teachers there. And I waited patiently for other girls. There was about 4 girls through before me. And then when they called my name, I went up. They have like a runner's box. I don't know if you remember the javelin or if you had it at school. Yeah. And then there's like 2 white lines that go out onto the field. And the school had put 2 of my classmates that I'd mentioned earlier, Sammy and Sarah, where the white lines were. They were standing to my right, just basically by the white line. So if I threw within the 2 white lines, it was considered a valid throw. And if it was outside, then it was a no throw. And so I did as I was instructed, waited for my name to be called, took my run up in the box and didn't go out of the box, and then threw the javelin as hard as I could, because I was just desperate to get this medal. And so, watched the javelin flying forwards, and at first, everything seemed to be going well. It was in a straight line, and then it was very strange, but it was as if at the last moment, it was almost like the wind took it, but there was no wind that day, but it just veered off to the right at the last moment. And it was heading towards my friend, Sammy. And myself and some of the others screamed her name because for some reason, we don't know why, she was distracted, and so she wasn't looking. And she seemed to see it at the last minute, and she ducked. And I remember having this like moment of, oh, thank God, you know, thank God for that. You know, have you ever had those near misses and you think, oh, in the car or something, and you think, oh, thank goodness. But then it was turned to horror because I saw the javelin strike her in the head, and she stumbled forwards. And I can't really describe to you the shock that I felt. It was so immense. You know, it was like my whole world just imploded. You know, something, you've seen horror films, you've seen different things, but this is a whole other level when it's actually reality in front of you, and you can't, your mind can't process what's happening because it's just so horrific. And I just, I remember I collapsed onto my knees with my head in my hands, and I was just saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Just overwhelmed. And I can't really remember much about what I know. Lots of people ran towards my friend, of course, to see how she was doing. Apparently I got up and I thought I was going to get help. I just remember thinking, got to go and get an ambulance. This was before the days of mobile phones. And so we were quite away from the school building. And I just remember my overriding feeling was wanting to get her some help. Apparently I was just running around in circles on the field. Until somebody realised, obviously I also needed help, and took me inside the school. They gave me lots of tea with lots of sugar. I couldn't hold it because I was shaking so much. I remember they were holding it to my lips. They kept telling me that it was okay, that she was going to be okay, and I thought she really wasn't. You know, I thought it blinded her, you know, which was bad enough. And I remember going, I don't remember getting home, but my mum came home. My mum was a teacher in a different school. Mm. She arrived home and I just said, Mum, I just want to go and tell her how sorry I am. You know, as a 13-year-old, you just want to tell your friend that you're really sorry, you know, that it was an accident. I still couldn't believe what was going on. And Mum said she'd take me up to the hospital, and I was wrapped in a duvet because I was just shaking so much with the shock. Got to the hospital and they told us that she'd been transferred to a different hospital, which I knew was really serious, because this was a specialist neurological hospital. And so I was left in A&E waiting room for the longest time in my life. It seemed was probably about half an hour while my mum went to find a doctor. And then she came back, we went outside, and I just said to Mum, is she going to die? And Mum said, yes, I think so.
Oh my goodness.
And 4 days later, she died in hospital. Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you because I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm looking at you now as a grown lady, and I'm trying to put myself through the eyes of a 13-year-old child. What's so lovely about the start of that story is that you were describing the weather. You know, I remember sports days at school and the clean cut grass and the atmosphere. And at 13, all you want to do is do your best, isn't it? You're worried about what people think. You've got high expectations. You've got, you know, you think the worst nightmare could be that you trip over running or you don't get your best throw. So you've got those already. You've had your stepfather, I think you said, putting negative thoughts into your head. So you've overcome it into an environment that you feel positive about. For that to happen to you, especially at that time, the gulf between what you were hoping for and what actually happened couldn't be any greater than what it was.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. I was going to go back to the initial first reaction of when you saw it happening, and you said that people eventually came to see you. You must have just buckled, did you? I
did. If you've ever experienced shock on this magnitude, it's almost like life is just sucked out of you. You know, I think I fell to my knees. It was like the life force just drained from me in that moment, and my mind was reeling. You know, it was chaotic. It was like trying to make sense of something which was no sense to. And yeah, you know, this was 30 odd years ago, and back then there wasn't even any, counselling or anything like that. So they didn't understand trauma. We didn't really understand mental health back then. And so, unbelievably, I didn't get any help at all. So not only in that moment did people not realise that I was experiencing major trauma, but even afterwards, there was no help. No one, no counsellor, no one to talk to. The GP said it didn't even need to go on my record.
No way. So at 13, this has just happened to you, and you've got peer pressure. You've got your own pressure, which is the main thing, but you've then got peer pressure, presumably guilt, and the pressure from the family. How was your friend's family towards you?
I feel quite emotional, but they were absolutely incredible. They couldn't have been more supportive right from the get-go. They didn't want my name in the newspapers, because this was all over the media, on the national media, it was on TV, it was on the radio, it was in the newspapers. And they said that they didn't want my name to be printed. One life had been ruined and they didn't want mine to be ruined also. And I just, at the time, couldn't understand it, because I just felt such overwhelming guilt. How can you not blame me? This left my hand and your daughter is dead. I couldn't understand it. I mean, it took me over 30 years, even only recently in the last few years, have I really understood that actually I also had a right to be safe at school that day. I just couldn't understand that back then. It was like, I thought I was going to prison. 13-year-olds, I thought, my God, I'm going to prison. This is it. I've killed someone. Even though, I know now with every fibre of my being, I did nothing wrong. I did exactly what I was told to do, as we do as school children. But even, if I had have been not doing as I was told, I was still a child. But I was, I did exactly as I was told, and I was a child. And, it's the unraveling of that has taken me so much longer, because I didn't get the help at the time to make sense of it all and to process it.
Presumably you had a process of events that you had to go through. The horrifying news that your friend had passed away. And sorry, what was her name?
Sammy.
Sammy had passed away, which is devastating. Then how did it cope with the planning for the funeral, for afterwards, for going back to school? Who did you have around you? I mean, I keep going back to the fact that you're younger than my daughters at this point, and I would, smother them with so much love, but it sounds like you had a lot of stuff that you had to deal with all by yourself.
That was pretty much how it was. The funeral, I think, because the funeral was something that I knew was coming, in a way, the accident was so traumatic that it just came so out of the blue. And the funeral was, was packed with her family and friends, and, seeing that hearse pull in with the coffin was just, I honestly don't know how I got through that whole time, but, that day particularly. And again, her family came to find me, to get me to sit up at the front with them. Bless I mean, just incredible people, the whole family, sister brothers, cousins, mum and dad, aunties, just the whole family, a grandma, was just incredible. But as I just thought, everyone is here because of me. If I hadn't have done thrown the javelin, none of this would have happened. And so I just couldn't get away from that guilt. And also having had those seeds planted by my stepdad earlier that there was something wrong with me, this now for me was like incontrovertible proof, that I must be evil is what I internalized, and that I should be punished. I was interviewed by the police when she died, and one of them said to me, did you argue with her that morning?
No.
And I thought, oh my goodness, I think I've done it on purpose. I couldn't believe it. And I just, remember saying, yeah, I didn't mean it. It was an accident. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. And they had the inquest later that year, and they proved that it was the school's responsibility. You know, I wasn't found to be at fault at all. But I didn't get to go to the inquest because the police said I can be in all the newspapers and the media, which I totally understand, but I didn't get to hear other people's points of view. And so I was just left with my own, you know, again, I just only had my version of what had happened. And so over time, I was only left with that version of what happened. And, you know, I was told there was no wind that day. And I thought, but it looked like the wind took it. So if the wind didn't take it, then my memory is not correct. And therefore, what else is not correct? And so it was, yeah, it was all very difficult. And I actually got to read the inquest notes when I was 28. And when I started to really look at all of this stuff, I got the inquest report. And the other girls who'd witnessed it all said it was as if the wind took it. They'd all seen it the same way, but I didn't get to hear that for 15 years. And so internalized a lot of this really negative beliefs about myself. And believing that I needed to be punished, I then found ways to punish myself through food. You know, to beat myself up by eating food. It became like a big control pattern for me. Or, you know, I wouldn't let myself be in healthy relationships. I'd have to sabotage any sort of success that I had. You know, it was all, I was doing it all unconsciously. It's only later looking at it all, I was able to see what I was creating for myself.
How did that come out then? Because it sounds like there was, I've got a couple of things. One, there was a bit of self-destruct in there afterwards. Perhaps you didn't think you were worthy, et cetera, because you're in a critic. But when they say about children and adults, that when you're going through a state of panic, everyone tries to get you to breathe, calm down, look around you, realize you're safe. And it's almost like that you woke up from a nightmare, and where a lot of people go, oh, thank goodness that didn't happen. You looked around you, all the eyes are on you at the funeral, your eyes are on you, your stepdad is confirming it. So everything around you is confirming what you've thought. Like you said, it compounded. That must be an incredibly powerful, horrible feeling. How the heck do you even get through the day, let alone move on?
Yeah, I do know how resilient we are as human beings, because I wouldn't be here if we weren't. You know, I think the trauma was so great that it was as if I had to sort of split off that part of my mind in order to keep functioning, because that pain was just so overwhelming. I had to, which is what we can, you know, is what we do. It's amazing how our mind can do that, but actually at what cost to us is the question, because I never felt like I was fully here. I never felt like a fully functioning human being. I was just walking around like this sort of shell, if I'm honest, just trying to find some sort of connection. Of course, what I was really looking for was a connection to myself, but I was just, yeah, I was just walking around like I felt like the Walking Dead. That's how I felt. And yet I put on this face every day, and people would not know how much I was struggling, because I remember just after it happened, I was asked, do you want to see a psychiatrist? So if you said that to a 13-year-old, even today, they're probably likely to say no. So I was given that option, and actually back then it was even worse, because we didn't even have counsellors and everything like that. And I just thought, they think that I'm mad. I must try and pretend that I'm okay, otherwise, you know, that's the route that I'll have to go down. But of course, it would have been the best thing I could have done back then, but I didn't know that at the time. And so what it meant was I felt like I had to keep trying to pretend that I was okay, and of course, really wasn't okay. In my mind, I spent a lot of time on my own in my bedroom, and I used to write letters to Sammy. And much later, when I did get help, they said that that was probably the healthiest thing I could have done, because I was able to express how I felt, even if those letters never got posted or read. I got a lot of comfort from writing them, and I felt like I was able to ask her the questions that I was left with. You know, like, I just wanted to know more about her, and never got that chance to ask her. So it was almost like I was asking that in the letters.
Yeah, it must have been quite almost therapy for you. I've
Yeah.
got to ask, your stepdad was influential before all this, lowering your confidence and your self-esteem. Must have quite enjoyed the whole experience. Did he have confirmation or that he was right in that what he was saying to you seemed to appear correct? Must have been hurtful for you.
It was on the way back from the funeral, he said, "That's it, we're never to mention her name in our house again." So I couldn't even talk about it to my mum in public. So sometimes I'd go to talk to my mum and she'd say, "Wait until he goes out." And then I'd get angry with my mum because I needed to talk to her in that moment and not at a later point when he had gone out somewhere. And so, that was very destructive for my relationship with my mum as well. Although I know she was trying to do the right thing now. But I know as a 13-year-old, it was just rejection, and nowhere to turn. And yeah, he just, his drinking got progressively worse over the next few years. And, my mum ended up having a breakdown when I was 15. And my sister had just gone off to college at that point. And so there was just me and my mum and him, and my mum was having a breakdown. So, it was all very difficult. And when I look back, parts of it I just don't remember because I think I just survived and got through. But there's one thing I am incredibly proud of myself for, and that was that I focused on getting my exams, which looking back is incredible in itself. So miracle. I think, that was the only thing. I think I just chose to focus on that, and I did it in Sammy's memory. So I got really good exams. O-levels, and when I was in the sixth form, and as soon as I was able to, I went to Citizens Advice Bureau. I told them what was happening with my stepdad, and they put me in a council flat while I did my A-levels. So I left home, and I think that was my first real stand on myself. And looking back again, I think, oh my gosh, everything I was holding at that point and everything I've been carrying, and then I left home as well, and was looking after myself while I was doing my A-levels. But
isn't it funny that hindsight, which is the only perfect science, by the way,
yeah.
that now looking back on it allows you to be proud of what you did. Your inner critic has turned from going, "You deserve this. Look, you're out on your own. You're 17, however old you were."
Yeah.
But now you look back on it with hindsight. You're incredibly strong. The point I keep hearing in your stories when I was doing my research is that you felt guilty. You felt there was something wrong with you. When you now look back, you don't. Do you think that? How do you see it?
Oh gosh, this has changed my whole life, is actually having compassion for myself and seeing, one of the key things I've learned is, these beliefs that we hold are then the lens that we see ourselves and others through.
Yeah.
And so having the belief that I was evil and deserved to be punished, that was the only way I could see myself. And yet looking back and seeing that that's what was happening, and being able to see it with a different lens and thinking, my gosh, I was a child. I also had a right to be safe that day. Living with my stepdad, I had a right to be in a loving, nurturing home, all of those things that I didn't have. And so then I really started to have compassion looking back, thinking, oh gosh, I didn't have those things. And yet I kept going. I feel emotional saying it. I just, you asked me how did I keep going? I think it was one day at a time, just getting through the day until I was older and started to be able to understand and open up and start to process things. But I kept thinking that a better day was possible. I think that's a key thing. I had hope, even though I didn't realize it at the time. If I get my exams, I can go off to university. That was my hope. I can get my exams and I can leave. And that's what I did. So having a focus, I think that's, a key thing for everybody. If you have a purpose, a goal, a focus, and I was unknowingly just focused and committed to that. And I made it happen. I drilled everything into that, and I got my exams and I went to university.
Lis, can I ask you one thing?
Yeah.
well-being to me is the sort of direction that you're traveling, either downwards,
Yeah.
upwards. It's to do with your own self-contentment. I know when kids are at school and they get bullied, it can affect them to the rest of their life. Not that I want to ask you if you're bullied, but what I'm saying is that must have created a footprint for your self-image and self-perception. When I was going through my little phase, I was going down and down and down and down, and that was, you only see that after you started coming up. Now, how did you change the trajectory from going down? Can you remember a time? For me, it was when I was going down the road and I found myself singing to a song, and I thought, I haven't sung to a song for 6 weeks. It was only singing to a song that made me realize I hadn't sung to a song. How did you make that change? When did you know it had hit rock bottom, and how did you start to come up again?
Well, when I left university, well, actually, when I was at university, someone introduced me to drugs, to ecstasy. And I was so I mean, I'd been such a good girl because living with my stepdad, I hadn't dared be anything else. You know, it was too dangerous a situation. But having then left and gone to university, and a friend of mine gave me some ecstasy. And as soon as I took it, all of my pain disappeared. You know, it was like, for the first time, I was like, oh, and I felt like I could be normal when I was on drugs. I had connection, I was popular, I was confident. You know, I suddenly became what I think now is more the real Liz, even though it was a fake way to do it. It's very interesting, the way that happened. But of course, it was a fake scenario. And what I realized is that ecstasy, the first thing it does is shut off that inner critic. That's what I know now. And so that's why I was able to feel more connected and open, and, you know, because I wasn't at the mercy of that voice that was screaming at me all the time in my head. And so I took more and more drugs over the years. And actually, I went into sales. You know, I did telesales, and then field sales, you know, sales development, business development. You know, I've done it my whole kind
Just
of sales.
took a bit more stress in there, Liz.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine? So this is what I mean, the unconscious punishment. So I went into an environment that is really, if you've got low self-worth, you know, you're facing constant rejection. I was like, it's amazing when I look back, you know, how I created those ways to punish myself on a daily basis, because it was like constant. You're a failure, you're not worth it, you know, I mean, and again, just hid it. So people who knew me back then said, oh, you seem so confident. And then all this was going on in my head, you know. So I'd achieve sometimes, because, you know, I am very competent, and I would achieve success. So then I'd have to sabotage it. You know, I'd be off sick for a while, or I'd get really bad results for a while. You know, it was this constant yo-yoing, really. And so you asked me what the point was where I really kind of started to change. And the drugs I was taking was getting more and more. I was in destructive relationships. My life was just really spiraling out of control towards my late 20s. And I had a car crash. So I was driving along one night. It was actually a black cab, came out of a one-way street the wrong way. And I looked up, saw my light was still on green, and was confused, but I didn't have time to stop, so I crashed into him. And what it meant was it gave me time to move out of London. I had a few months to recover from injuries, and it got me away from that clubbing lifestyle, which had become my life. It became my community, my sense of belonging, my self-worth. So I was out of that. And then I ended up moving to Leeds, at a different part of the country, and working with a hotel chain, because that had been my career in hotels. And they put me on a Dale Carnegie sales training course, of all things. Right. And we had to read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I just thrived on this course. You know, I was just reading it. It was almost like a remembering, you know, like a kind of faint remembering of something. And I read, if you think and act positively, you'll become positive. You know,
that's true, isn't it? That is true.
It's such a throwaway line sometimes, and it sounds so cliche. But for me, it was, you know, we talk about light bulb moments, but for me, it was like, wow, I've got choice. Are you kidding? You know, up till that point, it had just been horrendous. You know, it'd been all this negativity. And of course, when I look back, there was other parts to it. But at that point, that was the only lens I had, was, you know, trauma. Is this the only reason why I was born, to create so much misery and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly someone was saying to me, if you change your thinking, you can change how you feel. It was like, you know, a revelation. And so I went home that night. I was sharing a flat at the time, and I walked in to my flatmate, and she said, how are you doing? And I did my default, you know, I don't know if you have your default setting.
Fine.
God, I'm knackered, you know, I've been at work and blah, blah, blah. And I stopped myself. I said, right, I'm going to go back out. I'm going to come back in again. She looked at me like I was a bit mad. So I walked out, came back in. And she said, how are you, Liz? And I said, do you know what? I've just been on this really great course. I've learned some really cool stuff. I said, I'm feeling a bit tired, but, and I did it. I realized I had that choice, and I made that choice. It was like, that was the defining moment, because I realized in the moment I was being negative, and I stopped myself. I went out and I came back and did it again. And so I then start to do that. You know, if I was on a train station and I'd missed my train, I'd think, oh, well, that means my train is coming before too long. You know, I try and think, even on the small level, I'd try and change. I think, oh, yeah, actually, I do feel a bit better when I change like that. So that was the start, really.
I absolutely love that story of everything you said. It brings a smile to my face now, thinking that although you were on drugs and everything else, the most addictive thing is your self-improvement. It is incredibly addictive because you're 100% responsible for it. No one else can take applause for it. And I'm a massive advocate of life coaching and everything else, because do you know what? Yes, you had the choice. You have the choice, but you don't realize you've got the choice when you're down. And also, you don't have the confidence to give yourself permission to be happy. Now, if you can align that choice with permission to give yourself, it's all right to be happy. It's okay to then find another level of happiness. It's not selfish. It's not egotistical. It is not all these horrible words that just rename them and they mean something different. It means you're looking at yourself. Yeah. It was addictive by the sound of it, was it? You were off then.
Oh, but that was it. Although I didn't realize it at the time. And like you say, because all these beliefs I was holding underneath, for me, you know, what I realized was that it was actually quite simplistic. It's true. If you think and act positively, you will become positive if you're aligned internally with that. So what I then realized, as I started to look more deeply at the layers of the onion, I just didn't realize how many layers I was going to unpack. But, you know, realizing that I've always then got the choice for the next layer, and, you know, really, it's taken time to get to those core, realizing then those core beliefs, and they were driving everything. So I would have these moments of revelation, almost like a little hit, like you say, the addiction. I'd go on a course and I'd feel amazing, and then coming out, I go, you know, slowly back in. But each time, I used to think sometimes I was going backwards, but I realize now it's like a spiral. Like a spiral, I think, the personal development. So sometimes you're going round again, but actually you're still coming up. You know, it's like an
up to that higher vibration.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't just get from deeply traumatized, completely disconnected, to thriving in one book or one workshop. And that was a process of understanding, because I thought, you know, when I got this, right, that's it, you know, I know what I'm doing now. And
you're
of
not
course,
alone. I've been there myself.
It was just the start of it.
I've been there myself, and you think, you're at the bottom of the tree and you're looking at the top, saying, and you're comparing yourself against everyone else, and they're up there, and of course they're not, but you think they're up there, and I've got to get to the top of the tree. It's too much of a jump, so I won't bother. And what you did was start climbing the little steps. Yeah.
Exactly. But I was still being driven to this kind of perfectionist ideal, that there was some perfection that I was heading towards, you know, and then constantly feeling like I was failing because I wasn't there yet. I'm not there yet. I've still got, you know, I've got to better spend some more money on. I spent so much money over the years. But I mean, I loved it as well. I love learning. I love learning about myself. I love learning ways to connect more with myself and connect more with others. So, you know, coming back from, so after that, I went on this amazing traveling overseas, and, learned so much more about myself at that point. And then coming back from there, realized that I wanted to retrain and start to share some of these great things. I was like, I wanted to tell everyone, I think you become a bit of an evangelist at the beginning, like, I know the secrets to everything.
Or you want to keep it a secret because you don't want anyone to take it away from you.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I thought, I can't share this with people I know. They're going to think I've gone mad. Be talking about all this sort of stuff. They'll be like, God, what's up? But I actually felt more sane than I'd ever felt. But it became this sort of, I had a real spiritual awakening, and I'd rejected religion up to this point before I went traveling, because I was christened a Catholic. My mum's family was Catholic, and I'd just grown up with this sense that there was a punishing God, that there was a lot of shame and blame and guilt, which was like magnifying how I was feeling. So I'd rejected that because I was afraid that if there was a punishing God, that when I died, I was going straight to hell. Do not pass go, just go straight to hell. And so I was terrified of that. And then suddenly, on a beach in India, someone gave me Reiki, which is like a form of energy healing. And she didn't even put her hands on me. I just felt like completely blissful. I was like, for the first time in my life, without drugs. That's the key bit. I hadn't had any drugs. I'd actually gone away to stop taking drugs. Some people go traveling to take drugs.
Yeah.
But I just felt this sense of connection and bliss, and this connection to something much greater than me, but that I was connected to. And so that was a key bit. But I came back and I thought, I can't tell anyone about that. I can't tell my family or my friends that I've got this spiritual connection. I thought they're going to think I've lost the plot, and so it became this kind of shameful secret of mine. And that's been a real process. I've actually been able to, share it in an interview like this without thinking, people are going to think X, Y, Z, because people will think X, Y, Z, and that's okay.
They think that anyway.
I'm okay with that.
They think that anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, one of the best things I heard was don't hurt yourself to hurt others. Don't even focus on it. And
I think if more people like me don't share, there's other people who it's going to be their shameful secret at the moment. They're going to be...
You're normalizing the conversation around well-being.
Yeah.
You're in the Wellity Club.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay how you feel.
Yeah.
Because you feel it. So it's all right.
Definitely. And it's okay not to feel okay. There isn't this perfectionist. I think I really cracked it in a sense when I realized there was nowhere to go. And actually, I'm perfectly okay as I am, even if I'm in a lot of pain. That's okay. It's about learning to be able to embrace that pain, to be able to hold it in a loving way, and be able to hold myself and not reject those parts of me that I'd completely rejected. You're not good enough. I don't want you. And, I realized that actually, unless we embrace those parts and let them know that actually they're okay, we're never going to feel whole.
Okay, here's a question for you. Because I had the inner critic. I had to silence it. When you're on this positive, giving yourself permission to be positive and you're moving forward, this bloody inner critic keeps trying to hold you down and keeps reminding you of what you've done and where you've been. Is it still loud? What have you given it a name? What is it? How do you deal with that? Do you accept it and move on, or discard it?
It's a very, very good point. I think for a long time I tried to push it away, and it just got louder and it got louder and it got louder. And what I realized was that, and mine was, I'd be talking to somebody like you and the critic in my mind would be shouting in my head, shouting obscenities at you, shouting obscenities at me, and I'd be just chatting away and blah, blah, blah. I just look back and I think, oh my God, I'm just so relieved to be where I am now, but it has been a process. But I think that first of all, with awareness, and that's a key part of it, isn't it? I started to meditate, but actually that shines a light, and actually what was going on inside me wasn't pretty. And so I was just shining this light on a lot of trauma and this very loud voice. But I didn't know that voice was there until I shone that light on it. So that was the first step. And then through mindfulness, I was able to observe that voice, witness that voice. So instead of it just being So instead of the voice just being there and me thinking that it's me and it's, a part of it, I was able to, in mindfulness, because, with your eyes closed and meditating, I just want to newsflash for everybody. It isn't just calm and loveliness for a lot of us when we start. What we actually get is those voices, inner critic shouting louder, but we get to observe it. And so I got to observe it and I thought, God, I started to write, journal. I don't know if you know, the morning pages, the artist's way, Julia Cameron, she says, get up and just write. Yeah. Don't think about it and just write. And so I did that. And then I started to see this inner critic, shouting at me. Oh, it's like so strong. But then this quieter voice would emerge, like this softer, more gentle voice at the end. And so I started to try and listen to that voice more. And so over time, that is the voice that I've nurtured and listened to more. And so it's a really good question, because is the inner critic still there? Not the booming critic, no. Can
I tell you why I think it isn't? Because an inner critic, for me, was a bully.
Yeah.
Okay? And this bully, once I referred to it as a bully, it relied on me not telling anyone. So if I had a public engagement and I went up and it would go, you're going to do this, your legs are going to wobble, you're not going to be able to get your words out. God, by the time I've got to the microphone, I'm a mess. Now, the best thing you can do at that point is tell everyone. Because the minute you start talking about it and telling, in your case, morning pages, or opening up to me, or telling your story on a stage, you're telling everyone about the bully and what the bullies, they don't like. They don't like it to be above the parapet. They don't like it to be aired. They lose their superpowers. They'll go and pick on somebody else less strong.
Yeah.
That's what I think's happened.
Well, it's really interesting. And I learned the amazing Brené Brown, who's done Fab TED Talks, if anyone wants to go and look at that. But she says shame only exists in silence. And I think the bully creates that shame. Yeah. And so, I totally agree with you. I think I've taken it a step further now, though, is that I see the bully in a different way. So I now have compassion for the bully because I realise, I think that there's levels, as I say, there's levels of awareness. Because I used to try and reject the bully, or think, I'm not listening to you, you're a bully. But I was still seeing that as a bully then. And actually, then I started to turn towards it internally with compassion. Oh, where is that? That bullying voice is coming from a very fearful place. When I started to be with it, listen to it, find out, what it had to say, I thought, it's just in fear. It's in fear. What it needs is to feel safe. So then make that part of you feel safe. And then there is no bully. But actually it had a purpose. Its purpose was actually trying to protect me. That bully telling you your legs are going to wobble and you're not going to, it's trying to stop you. It's trying to stop you from, making a fool of yourself or getting it wrong. Actually, it ends up almost creating it, but its purpose is actually to try and protect you. And that's what I realized. So then I started to reframe it all. And I think that's another reason why I don't have it anymore, because I don't even see it in the same way. If I notice if fear's coming up at me, then I'll take some time to be with the fear and what it's got to say.
And so you went to India. You've progressed now in terms of your own well-being and stuff you'd have found out. I've not done it, so I'm really interested, as I'm sure our audience are. How would you define well-being?
That's a really good question. For me, well-being is self-acceptance. Yeah, self-acceptance, self-love, if you can progress to that. But I think self-acceptance is a first step. Self-acceptance, self-love, and then what is it that I can do in order to sustain that within myself? So that's mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. I need all of those things to be in balance for me to feel like I've got a really good, strong sense of well-being for me. And so it's looking at those different areas. So sometimes my focus might be more on my physical well-being, or sometimes it might be on my mental or emotional well-being. So for me, there's the different aspects of it: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And for me, it's been that process of, you know, looking at them all to get them into balance. Then I feel balanced. So it's a sense of balance.
A sense of balance and acceptance.
Yeah.
It's I could ask a million people, I get a different variation. It's so personal, isn't it? But it's interesting as well. You link physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. How much emphasis do you place on physical?
I think they're all, they need to all be equal. As I say, I think the physical for me is the one I've spent the least time and energy on, and it's, you know, it's something that I'm consciously aware of and still being with. It's almost like, you know, I rejected my body, I think, because of what happened. And so they say with trauma, it's almost like part of us comes out of our body. They call, you know, you can have out of body experiences in different ways, but with trauma, it's, so for me, it's been a process of feeling safe in my body, you know, and that is an ongoing process, but I've come a long way. You
have come a long way. And I see a lot of people who quite rightly study these topics, and psychologists, etc., etc. I mean, you did it the hard way. You got the hard yards and bought the t-shirt because of your story. There is going to be so much that you've learned that everyone can't learn in a textbook or a course. What's the biggest takeaway? What do you think is, I'm putting you on the spot, I know. I'll buy you another couple of seconds. What have you learned that you can't learn in a textbook that you could teach someone? What's the biggest thing that you've learned about your journey?
There's so many. I know I've kind of sprinkled some of them throughout this interview.
We've got time.
Yeah. What's the...
This is such an interesting pause.
And there's all sorts going on.
I know, I bet there is. I mean, what advice would you give someone who's been through any sort of trauma then? Let me word it a different way. They don't have to be 13, they could be 30, they could be 60. How could you fast forward their recovery? I think
if it's trauma, then I'd say you're having a normal reaction to an abnormal event. So however, I mean, I only learned that a few years ago, and the fact, you know, to actually attach the word normal to myself was life-changing, because I just felt, you know, I'd felt so evil and blah, blah, blah. And actually to be told that the way I'd been feeling all those years was a normal reaction to an abnormal event really shifted something on a very deep level for me. So in terms of trauma, that would be, I think, the thing that I'd want everybody to know, that however you're feeling, and, you know, I'm choosing to thrive now, but that has been a process, and I don't want, you know, it's taken a while, but I think people can do it sooner. There is more awareness, there's more people like me sharing, there's more tools, there's therapists, but it's not that you have the trauma and then the next month you're okay. So allow yourself the time to go along the journey, you know, and it's about that acceptance at every step. So you're not heading somewhere, you're just accepting each step. So you know, you're okay. Yeah. That's brilliant.
Take it. What you did was you started taking it step by step and taking each day as it came. And one of the other things that I've taken away from, because as all of these things, when you're talking, you're telling your story, I interpret it and I add it into my own story.
Yeah.
To see what I can learn. I think one of the things is just calm down sometimes and trust life.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Good things will come. You're not the only person where it's all bad, bad, bad. Something will happen. Be aware of that opportunity when it does come.
Yeah. And life goes in waves. It goes in cycles. You know, this too will pass is something that you know, and I still can get triggered now. We just don't know with trauma. It's unpredictable. But, you know, I just tell myself this too will pass, and it always does, you know, because it can seem like, you know, when you're in it, and it seems like there is no hope and there is no future, and that there's just this pain and it's never ending. And I know that feeling very well. And so to just even be able to say, this too will pass in those moments, even if you can't fully feel that, it will start to shift something. You know, what we tell ourselves is a key part of it. So just saying, I know this is going to pass, this will pass, I know this is going to pass. I accept what's happening, rather than trying to push it away or pretend, you know, try and be something else. I think that you've got to be something else. Just really accepting, okay, I'm feeling this way, it's okay, and it will pass. That can really...
I'm feeling this way because of not just what circumstances happened to me, but what everybody else has been telling me over the years that could have been born out their own insecurities because they didn't want me to succeed because it highlighted them. So you've been hardwired, just it's okay to rewire.
Yes, definitely. And it's okay not to, you know, I said to you at the beginning, people will think X, Y, Z, and that's okay. I mean, gosh, this was a massive shift for me. You know, I had such a low self-worth. I was just going with other people saying this and other people. I was like, I was just being tossed around in the wind. You know, that's how it felt. And just like, oh, here's a bit of an anchor point. Oh no, here we go. Here's a bit of an anchor point. No, it's just
you're constant. On the lower vibration, happy to accept anything, aren't you, at that time?
Yeah, any little, you know, thing. And then people would say, you're a bad person. And I go, oh, they're right, I am, you know. And now I think, I know, this is the thing I think that I've always known, is that inside I'm a good person. You know, not a good, bad, but I know that I'm a kind person at heart.
You are.
You know, I have good intentions. I want to make a positive difference to other people. You know, all of those things. So if somebody else wants to label me X, Y, Z, I now know that that's more about them than it's about me.
Yes. Absolutely.
And again, not judging them, because I know how hard that is. So, you know, with compassion, I let them think what they like. I love, there's a quote, do you know, Brené Brown, she talks about the Roosevelt quote, the man in the arena. It's a brilliant quote if you look it up, it's quite long, but basically what the quote says, if you're in the cheap seats throwing things at me when I'm in the arena, I'm not interested in what you've got to say. But if you're in the arena getting yourself mucky and, you know, sweaty and you're in it, then I will listen to what you say. I may still not do anything, but I will listen to what you've got to say.
And I love that. In life, I think we're all in that arena because we've all got our own problems. I think, you know, we're all on a scale of 1 to 100. No one's exempt. So 1 is, you know, in terms of mental health, you're just tired and exhausted, or the kids have been up, or you're hungover, and all the other end is clinical depression and suicide. And I think everyone's on this chart. So there's 2 things. How do we normalize the conversation that we're actually all in the arena? No one should be chucking anything at anyone or pretending they're not in it, because we're all on this level. And also, dare I ask you where you are on that level now in terms of your own happiness and acceptance?
Yeah, definitely. I wake up in the morning and I feel okay.
I'll take that.
And that was not the case for a very, very long, you know, I'd wake up, this sense of impending doom a lot of the time, or you know, got to face the day. And I wake up and I feel okay, I feel good, you know, and then I start the day. And I think you know, this is the other thing, is that I have tools, practices, strategies. This is the thing I wanted to get across as well. There isn't just some kind of, you know, you just make the switch and then you're just floating along. It's, you know, it's a commitment every day that I make to myself, and it's not hard work. They've become integrated into my day. So mindfulness, for example, I love mindfulness. It's not a hard chore, but it is something that I commit to every day. Or it might be going out dancing when we're allowed to, although I have been dancing around my bedroom. But again, you know, giving myself...
you left your camera on. You went off to make a cup of tea. I saw you didn't put it off.
But giving myself permission for those things that actually, you know, we have so much of our work, especially, you know, I've done the corporate thing, I've done the big commutes, I've, you know, been in the stressful jobs, and if we don't bring in those things that actually balance, talking about well-being, they actually give us energy. So mindfulness gives me energy. So is that dancing, you know, talking to friends, meeting friends, being in nature, whatever it is for you, healthy ways to top up your energy. You're just on a one way, you know, you're just gonna burn out, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And you get more tired, and you don't do the things that sustain you or inspire you. So it's really having a conscious commitment to yourself. And even if you've got to schedule those in your diary and protect them, I will take a 20-minute lunch break. I will walk outside for 5 minutes and feel the sunshine. You know, those things you can do on a daily basis. I do mental health awareness trainings, and people say, but I'm so busy and I've got a family, how do I do it? So if it's looking at your day, you know, can you listen to a meditation app on the tube for 10 minutes? That's what somebody chose to do, and then it started changing their whole day. You know, can you get off the tube and stop earlier and walk a bit more? So you don't actually have to create more or fit more in. It's about looking at everything and how can you support yourself better.
Well, you got onto a topic of mine, which is, you know, mental health and well-being in the workplace. The landscape's changing now. This could take another hour. We'll reduce it. It's a changing landscape where people have suddenly prioritized their own well-being, and they're re-qualifying what they want from work, what it gave them. Am I going to do that extra job around EMEA just because I want that 20 grand? Or actually, do I value time with my family and children and pets, and it's giving me more fulfilling life experience? What do you think that corporate environment could do more? How do you think it will change now?
I think you're absolutely right. I think, you know, there's organisations that have said, oh, we can't function if people work from home, that have now been proved wrong. So they're going to have to look at things. And there's people who didn't think they could work from home and are enjoying it, like you say, and thinking, why am I doing this 2-hour each way commute, or, you know, sardine in the tube, or whatever it is. And so I think it is about, really, this is a chance to just re-look at the whole culture of an organisation and what is the well-being and what things can they put in place, and, you know, more flexi working, which, you know, over time can reduce overheads for organisations. So I think it's about looking at all of that. But I don't think people are going to be able to go back to the way things were. This is a big time of awakening, I think, on many different levels. Because if you've been on that hamster wheel, and it is a hamster wheel if you're in the corporate world sometimes, and you just do and repeat, like Groundhog Day film. And now suddenly people have had a break, an extended break. That is bound to get people questioning, what am I doing with my life? And, you know, what are my priorities? And so organisations need to be aware of that and need to, flex, I think, and really look at things in a different way. Yeah,
for context, everyone, whenever you watch this, we're sitting in the midst of COVID-19.
Yeah.
It really is a period where everyone is reevaluating. You're right.
Yeah.
Look, you talked about mental health training. We're going to wrap up shortly, but I want people to be able to find you. I must say, you were so warm when I, made contact with you. How can other people find you? What do you do now in that corporate arena? And how can they get in touch?
Oh, yes, thank you. So I'm a inspirational keynote speaker. I do speaker panels around mental health. So I'm always happy to come in and talk to organisations. I'm also a coach. So I can work one-to-one or with teams around well-being, and I deliver mental health awareness trainings into corporates. Again, as I say, moving forwards, happy to look at this in a more holistic way as well, if organisations are really looking now to do things differently. So I'm also a consultant that can come in and support with that. And people can find me on my website. I'm lucky that my name is unusual, so there's only one me that I'm aware of in the world, and it's liscachin.com.
All right, well, they can also find you within the Wellity community, because we're going to put you front and centre. I've enjoyed every second of this. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I'd just say, however anyone is feeling, if you realise that you are struggling, reach out for help. Whether that's help online, ringing somebody, you know, even the Samaritans, or Mind have a helpline, or friends and family, or getting yourself a coach or a therapist or somebody. But like we said, shame exists in silence. And I know from my own experience, through my own shame, of how detrimental that was to my overall well-being, not to speak up sooner. And so I just really encourage everyone to share, but share with somebody that you trust. You know, don't go up to a stranger and start offloading your deepest stuff, because that actually can be not safe. But really find someone that you trust, or, you know, look out for those organisations that can really support.
Okay, you're inspirational, because you say it with such a voice, that you've experienced everything. It's such authenticity. And you know what? It's okay to be happy. It's okay
Yes.
to find that.
Yeah, it is. It so is. And like you say, giving yourself permission, and I do give myself permission to be okay and not to be okay.
Yeah. But thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it. Our paths will continue to cross, I hope.
I hope so too.
And I wish you every success in the future.
Thank you so much, Simon, and best of luck with Wellity.
Yay. Thank you very much. Thanks ever so much, Lis.